Hi, and welcome back to Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm Elizabeth Nelson here with Kay Johnson as always. And Kay, what have you been reading this time?
Not a thing.
I have a really hard time believing that.
Well, I just couldn't resist. Well, I can tell you that right now I am reading George Ballars, who's an English mystery writer who wrote in the 40s and 50s.
Okay.
And he's written a lot of books, like 40, 50.
Okay.
I had read a lot of them a while ago, a couple years maybe. And then there were some I missed, so I'm picking those up.
Oh, good.
But the books take place 10 years after World War II.
Okay.
And so the protagonist, Chief Inspector Littlejohn, works in London, but he also likes to go to France.
Oh, okay.
And so he happens to be on vacation, and a former member of the French resistance is stabbed. And the guy's English. So Little John gets roped into figuring this out. This is what I'm reading right now. And so it's actually pretty, I really like his books.
Good.
So that's fun, and they're always good, and they usually have a fairly interesting twist that you started thinking, okay. So that's what I'm reading. I've read several of those in a row. So I'm into George Ballars. And Death in Room 5 is the one I'm reading right now about the fellow from England who was actually a resistance guy who got... So what are you reading, Elizabeth?
I just finished a book by Amanda Collins. I always want to say Amanda, but it's Manda. And it always throws me off. But the book is called A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem.
Oh, okay.
And this is it's a series now. The second book just came out, and I don't remember. It's something to do with an heiress, but I'd have to go back and look it up. But the first book is about Lady Catherine, who is the owner of a newspaper in London, and it's there's a serial killer on the loose called the 10 Commandments Killer.
Okay.
Because they kill people, the person is murdered, and there's a sign left to them next to them, whatever their sin was. So she and a friend of hers who decide that they're going to write a column in this paper, and they're going to call it The Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem, and they're going to give their thoughts and account on this murder. And in doing so, they uncover another witness and publish her information about it, and she gets the lead investigator kicked off the case.
Oh.
So these two aren't getting along at all, and then she goes away for the weekend, and lo and behold, the 10 Commandment Killer follows them to the chateau, the country estate that she goes to stay in. So it's really good. It's kind of more of like there's a little bit of a romance in it with the detective and Lady Catherine, but then the second book in the series follows two of the supporting characters.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those series where it's the first book and then the second book will be these other two. And I don't know if there'll be more than that, but it was really good. I laughed out loud at a lot of parts. But Lady Catherine she's a widow. Her husband was the owner of the newspaper and passed away. And she convinced everybody that the newspaper was hers and she was going to run it. So
she's got some moxie.
Cool. She's got some moxie. She's kind of your modern woman stuck in
19th century England.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember who was on which monarch it was, but it was really good. I really liked it. I laughed out loud and I read it really quickly. But there is a second one that just came out, and I'll look that up for next time what the title of the second one is. But I saw it at Target and I almost grabbed it. But I'm trying to rein it back because Christmas is coming.
And the geese are getting fat.
They are. But Christmas is coming, and I figure if I buy books, I'll get them home, and then my husband will say that could have been a gift idea.
That's true.
As he tends to do about this time every year. So I really liked that one. I also read a book called The Wedding Date.
Okay.
By Jasmine, I think it was Guillory, Guillery. And this is about, the two main characters are Alexa and Drew. And they meet when their elevator at the hotel breaks down, and they're stuck in an elevator. And Drew needs a date to his ex-girlfriend's wedding because he has told people he's bringing his girlfriend, and he has no girlfriend. Drew does not do girlfriends.
Does he?
That's what he says. He doesn't do girlfriends. So
what does he do?
Asks. He's like a serial dater. He doesn't do commitment, I guess. And so he decides to ask Alexa to come to the wedding, and then it follows. Their romance as it spirals. And I liked this book, but sometimes I just wanted to reach into the book and smack them around a little bit because so much of the issues would have been just fine if somebody would have opened their mouth and said, this is what I'm thinking.
Right. No communication.
Instead of all of the
assuming everyone reads minds.
Yes. And it was just like, I'm going to reach in this book and I'm going to smack you. I'm like, I know exactly what's going to happen in this next page. That was one of those books. I've done it with a few other books where I get so mad that like I put the book down and like I'm like talking to myself, and Tom's like, "Who are you yelling at?" And I'm like, "I'm yelling at the book."
Yes.
He's like, "The book can't hear you," and I was like, "It makes me feel better about it."
That's
right.
right.
People are being so dumb. And it's been a while since I've done that, but I had a few with some of the books in the Bridgerton series that I've been reading. Some of those, when you get to a point and you're like, I know exactly what you're going to do and it's going to make me mad and I'm still going to read this book anyway. I'm still going to get ticked off about it.
It happens.
But it has. There was one book, I don't remember what it was, but I threw it like across the room. And Becca said, my sister was like, that was an overreaction. And I was like, well, you read the book. And then a few days later, you heard a thud and she threw the book off the table. And I was like, it's an overreaction. And she didn't think that was funny, but
they never do.
No, but it was really good. And the wedding date is actually, I haven't read the other ones. It's the same kind of thing. It's a series with some of the other characters in it. So I haven't, the second book is called The Proposal. And it's a girl's boyfriend proposes to her at a professional baseball game. And she says no. And so the crowd goes nuts and she has to escape, and she escapes with a friend of Drew's, and it's how that all grows. So I do know about the second one with that, but I haven't read it yet. I've been on hold for it at the library for a while. So, but those are both really good, quick reads.
Yeah, books, there's a lot to be said for quick reads. I finished in the middle of my George Ballard's books, Terminal Freeze by Lincoln Child.
Okay.
And Lincoln Child is part of the Preston Child writing team. They collaborate on some books, and then they also individually write their own series. Yeah. And he has, Lincoln Child has a series with a guy named Jeremy Logan. Okay. And he teaches medieval history at Yale. But he also is what's called enigmatist or an enigmatologist. But anyway, what he is he's really looking into things that go bump in the night. And anyway, he is he's researching something, and he comes across a file about a scientific team that vanished in the 50s. Okay. And anyway, meanwhile, it's at a retired military base called Camp Fear. It's way up north.
Sounds like a great place to be stationed.
Yeah, yeah. It's way far north, and it was established in the 50s when the Cold War was on, and they were afraid that Russia would bomb the United States. Sure. So they had posts far, almost to Alaska, to Russia. Yeah. And so what ends up, to cut to the chase, is they find a prehistoric creature, and then...
And they just leave it alone, right? They cover it back up and they walk away.
That's it. No, let's just cut him out of the ice, haul his...
Yes.
And then we're going to film it for national TV. And of course, the ice melts, the guy escapes, and needless to say, all hell breaks loose. And Jeremy Logan ends up there, and he collaborates with some scientists who are on site, and they end up solving the problem, and things end well. But it's actually a good read. It's 400 and some pages. But there's like 7 Jeremy Logan books, and they're all pretty good. Okay. And so, but this one was on my Kindle. Okay. And I must have downloaded it at some point, but just never read it.
Oh, yeah.
So when it popped up, I thought, oh, it's Jeremy Logan. Oh, I've got to read it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I read between some of my George Ballard books.
Do you find, like, for me, like, sometimes I want to read a bunch of books by the same author, but then sometimes, and I want to find out what happens, and then you forget to read other books, or do you like to try to break them all up as you?
Depends on what's going on, because sometimes, like the George Ballard books happen to be free and Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
So
You just
I'm
can read
downloading
all,
them
yeah.
super fast so that I'll have them, because you can only have up to 10 books at a time. And so those are free. Free's always caps waiting for the library books or buying them. But I did break down and buy a book.
Oh, yeah?
I paid $14.99 for the Kindle edition. And it is the third in a series by Anthony Horowitz. And he wrote Midsummer Murders. He writes for And this book is called A Line to Kill. And his protagonist is a former police detective named Hawthorne.
Yes, I have not read the newest one.
Oh, I've got it right
Yes.
here. I maybe can send it to you.
Yes, that'd be great.
And, Hawthorne needed money, so he decided to find a writer to write about his cases. And Horowitz, somehow they connected. And Horowitz is sort of a dunce in these books. And Hawthorne is really tight-lipped. And the third one is good, and I'm just trying to think, among all the murders in my head, what happened in this one. And, they went to a book fair, a book festival on...
Book readers are dangerous people, man.
Yeah,
I tell ya.
and it was in... it was either the Island of Man in the Irish Sea, or it was Guernsey Islands.
You're gonna need to stop reading English mysteries
I
for a
know.
while. You're
I
getting
spent a
all
lot of
confused.
time on those darn Guernsey Islands, I'll tell you. This is on one of the Guernsey Islands.
Okay.
It's Little John who's going to the Island of Man. And so what ends up happening is they go to this first-time festival, and of course someone gets murdered, and Hawthorne is trying to figure it out, and Horowitz is sort of in the dark, following him around, and it's actually good. I really, when I saw it came out, obviously since I paid $14.99.
Yeah, I liked it just because I think it's interesting when the author puts himself in the book as a character.
Yes.
And he's the author, Horowitz is the author that was given the okay to continue the Sherlock Holmes mystery, right? Yeah. And Horowitz kind of reminds me of, his character kind of reminds me of the Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And Watson.
Well, I think,
But I think Watson was a little more capable than...
Well, the problem with Horowitz is he always seems to be sort of a day late, a dollar short.
Yeah.
And every time he makes sort of a startling realization...
It almost gets him killed?
Yeah, and then Hawthorne's always like, well, it's about time.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. It just came out, I think, recently.
Okay.
And what else are you reading, dear?
I've read, with Alex, we read the first P.L. Travers Mary Poppins book.
Oh, are they good? I've never read them.
It was pretty good. It's not like, don't go into it. We just read the first one. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be the movie. I mean, there are parts that come and go. They pulled different aspects, I think, for probably quite a few books. But it was pretty good. He would rather watch the movie, he told me. But it did not go over as well as Charlotte's Web or Winnie the Pooh.
Oh,
So
are you reading classics with him?
We've been trying to find different. He's getting to the point now where he wants to be read to a little more. He likes the picture books and to read what he can remember. But it's kind of, Tom is, when he does bedtime, has been going through some of the chapter books with him. So just trying to find different ones for him for that. And this one I could get on my library alone on my phone, and I just would read him about a chapter.
Treasure Island?
Have not yet.
I'm
more excited for the day that I can break out the Harry Potter books with
Alex.
Though it's going to be a little while still, but though he has seen the first movie with his aunt when he had a sleepover.
Oh,
so.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes,
well, we saw the first one at the State Theater last month, I think, or October.
Okay.
They showed it, and that was really fun because that's really my favorite.
Yeah.
And you're watching it, and when did it come out? Like 20 years ago?
I think, yeah, at least.
And so you're thinking, wow, this is really a great movie.
Yeah. It was when we just moved back here because it came out on like a Monday night because Nana took us, and that means Mom was working. So, because she bought the tickets ahead of time.
Well, it
So.
was a phenomena that will probably never be repeated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Mary Poppins, but she's the magical nanny that shows up to right the world.
Yes.
I don't know, did you see the Saving Mr. Banks movie
I didn't.
with Tom Hanks and
yes,
Emma Thompson?
and he was Disney,
Yes,
Walt Disney.
yeah,
and,
that was really good. So I thought, I kind of like keeping that in the back of my mind and listening to some of the book was kind of interesting. But there's some parts that in the first book that are in the movie, and there are some that aren't, and it was kind of interesting. But it was good. I don't know if we'll keep going. He kind of ixnayed Mary, so we might just stick with Julie Andrews, I think, for him.
Well, sometimes that's better part of wisdom.
Yes. And then I went down, I pulled out a true crime book just because it popped up from the library. I have this really bad habit of requesting like 7 books from the library, thinking they'll come every once in a while, and they all come at once. So this one is called The Babysitter, My Summer with a Serial Killer.
Oh.
By Liza Rodman and Jennifer Jordan. And this is about a little girl whose mother was head of housekeeping in, and where she worked, Tony Costa is a serial killer, and he was the handyman, and she spent all summer riding around in his vehicle with him, and he pretty much babysat them. So it's the story of her talking about what she remembers of him, and then the other chapters are about him and his crimes. And so I'm reading it right now, but it's kind of scary to think about that.
Yes, I would think so.
And I mean, she says that, the book starts out with her having a nightmare about running away from him, and she can't figure out why she would be afraid of him because she has these great memories of, riding in the truck with him and him taking her and her sister to go and get ice cream and all these good thoughts. And she has her mother over, and she's like, why would I be afraid of him? And she's like, well, you know how things turned out with him. And she's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, he was a serial killer. And it's like,
that would be a bit shocking, I think.
yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a...
And how did Mom take it that her daughters were hanging with
I don't think... Mom didn't really seem to care. From what I've gathered so far in the book, Mom's not that much of a bang-up character herself. So, but that was... So I had to pick up that true crime, and then... But I think I'll need another break from true crime soon.
I don't read a lot of true crime.
I do, but it kind of goes in spurts. It's not really... True crime is not really a book you can read before you go to sleep and expect to have cozy, feel-good dreams about anything. So I kind of have to space out like what I read during the day and then what I read at night. And I've always done the same thing too with like stuff I'll watch on TV. Like I can't expect to like watch like Game of Thrones or something and then fall asleep and
sleep well.
Yeah. No good dreams will come sometimes, or it can just lead to really kind of crazy dreams where you're like, where did that come from?
I hear you.
Yeah. What else have you been reading?
Again, an English author named Brian Flynn, and he wrote in the 20s and 30s. Okay. And they've reissued his books, and I can get a lot of them free on Kindle Unlimited. But his books are really great. I enjoy them a lot, but you can tell they're old because of the language. And a lot of times that's kind of quaint versus some of the slang writers use today.
Yeah.
And his protagonist is a guy named Anthony Bathurst. And I may have talked about these books before, but he is a private detective, private income, but he consults with Scotland Yard. Okay. And he's sort of a genius, and so they roll him out when things are tough and stuff. And so, he wrote in the 20s, 30s, 40s. Okay. Because he's got several that have Nazis in them and stuff like that. But they're really good, and I have enjoyed them a lot. Again, I'm into English mysteries. So I have to say that one really I would recommend those books.
Yeah, good.
And what else have I been reading? Hang on. I don't know if, have you read, did you participate in the One Book, One Community?
I haven't, just because I can't always get there with everything else going on in schedules.
Well, this year, because of COVID and everything, they've only set one event, and that is the author appearance on April 2nd at the Hutchinson Event Center. And the book is what I think is a really good one. It's by a guy named Christopher Ingraham. And he's a writer for the Washington Post. And I may have talked about this before, but he is a data reporter, so he uses all these numbers that the government issues and builds stories around them. And one of them was the Department of Agriculture quantified different types of amenities that people want where they live. And so he was looking at this and wrote a story about the worst place to live in America.
Oh, gosh.
And it happened to be up north, Minnesota, in a place called Red River Falls.
Okay.
And it's up in the northwest corner. And, you know, he wrote a story, filed it, and moved on, and so on. And it blew up on Twitter. And, you know, being Minnesota nice, nobody trashed him, like,
To his
directly.
face, yeah.
But they let him know that they didn't appreciate what he said. And to make a long story short, they invited him to visit. And he went. And he really liked it. And it just happened to work out that he and his wife had twins. And the cost of living was so high on the East Coast that they wanted another child. They couldn't do that. They were really landlocked in a townhouse. And to move for more space, it would cost so much. And he had an hour plus commute every day and each way. And she worked for the Social Security Administration. And so they worked a lot, but they weren't getting ahead. And so they end up moving to Red Falls, Minnesota. And it's fun reading the book. And it's a pretty quick read. And it's interesting because it's like putting a mirror up to us, which we don't often do, you know. But he was not a fan of tater tot hot dish. And he was very happy that Amazon delivered, so he could order the things he'd like to eat. And he had to get used to the fact that he didn't have world-class health care, you know, down the road, or private schools, or, you know, all the amenities that he was raised with. But the flip side of that, of course, was solid neighbors you could depend on, smaller school district where people did care. So I'm really looking forward to his personal appearance, April 2nd. 2 p.m.
August 2nd is Alex's birthday. That's why you said
I knew it was an important date. But I think that, and the library has books, and the library has a book club kit too. So if you're in a book club and you'd like to read it, just talk to Katie Hiltner at Hutch, and she can help you at the library. And then it's also for sale at the Village Shop and the Hutchinson Center for the Arts. And so if you haven't bought Christmas gifts and you have a reader in your family, I highly recommend it because it's, like I said, a quick read. And it appeals to men and women because Ingraham takes up hunting and ice fishing. And I think that people who pursue those hobbies would find it interesting to see how that goes for him.
Well, we don't have any readers in our family.
None,
so I don't think
zero.
there'd be anyone
I
interested
actually
in
had a
books,
copy that I gave Nana, so.
Hopefully she'll pass it on.
So, but yeah, it's one that I think people are really going to enjoy and talk about because, you know, it's interesting to hear what people think and so on and so forth. And then to move, I mean, wow, that's like a big thing.
So they were on the east. Where were they on the east?
Maryland.
Coast? Maryland. Okay.
Baltimore, I think, because they commuted to Washington, D.C.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a bit of a move from East Coast to tiny.
and connected people on the East Coast, you know, I mean, who did things in restaurants and, you know, all sorts of stuff, and moved to a town, a very small town where you have to drive everywhere. Mm-hmm. In the book, he talks about when he visited the first time, he pulled his rental car over and just stood on this road, and there was nothing other than cornfields.
Oh, yeah.
And he just listened because it was so quiet. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much noise on the East Coast, apparently. And the same at night, the stars. Mm-hmm. There wasn't the light pollution that you get in a city. And so those are the interesting things because you don't really think about those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a really good read. He's a good writer. I think people will enjoy it.
Good. And on that note, we're out of time for this episode. So if you have something you want us to read or you have any questions about what we talked about, reach out to us on Facebook or our email at offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.